On today's show, this archer's goals hit right on target. Discover Minnesota's young hotshot.
And they're still haunted by it.
We look back at one of Minnesota's fiercest winter storms, a blizzard that took duck hunters by complete surprise. And this hunter leaves no stone unturned.
Minnesota Bound. Brought to you by Minnesota's select GMC dealers.
Hey everybody, Laura and I are glad to have you along for today's adventure.
Did you know that almost 200,000 students participate in Minnesota school archery programs?
I'm guessing that winning a championship takes a ton of practice and skill.
Exactly why one young lady I met has quite the story to tell.
Hearing the whistle blow means school's out and it's time to draw a bow. Winning state archery championships is the ultimate dream at Open World Learning School in St. Paul, Minnesota. And it all started due to the generosity of hunters.
OWL has had an archery team for almost 15 years. It started with a equipment grant from Pheasants Forever.
15 years later, it's one of the school's most popular sports.
This year we're over 50, and where some large schools have well over that, we're only a school of just over 450. So we have over 10% of the school that is in our program.
Winning state archery championships would soon be realized when a young lady decided to join the archery league with zero experience.
My name is Emily Rose Yang, and I love archery. When I moved schools in 7th grade, that's when I came to Open World Learning Community. And my mom works here after school.
At the end of the day, she is waiting for me to complete work, and so she tried the archery team out. She liked it and stayed. And that's the beginning of her real archery career.
Since the first day, I really fell in love with archery.
Her love turned into a passion, and she entered an essay contest to win her own prize possession.
I was really into archery, and I thought that getting my own bow would be the best start to the full commitment to it.
Little did she know, winning the bow and practice would launch her into the history books at the Minnesota State Archery Tournament.
So this year, my tournament score, which is also my personal best, was 293 points out of 300.
Not only was the score good enough to beat all the girls, she beat all the boys too.
It was really unbelievable. It didn't seem like it was really true. Yeah, until I looked at my scorecard.
Coach Tom was also impressed with his young archer.
Here's an example of somebody who went out there and shot better than everybody. Boys, girls of all age groups. So it was really amazing.
It means a lot to me, because when you look at the people there, it's mostly males, and there is a small percentage or smaller percentage of females. I would say it's empowering. Some people say that I'm inspiring, and I didn't really ever think about that until I was told that.
Winning isn't what's most important for Emily, her team, or her coaches. It's something bigger than that.
And I hope to really have a strong impact on the newer students, especially the 6th graders, as they do look up to us high school students.
Instead of, producing state champions or winning team championships, those things are nice, but it really is about the character piece that they develop. I might not have another Emily for 10 or 15 years. We have one in 15 years. It might be 15 years before I get another champ. But I can get 30 kids who leave the program knowing that they tried hard at something and got better, and feel more confident and understand that that can be the same in any field that they try to follow.
Student or coach, giving back and mentoring youth into the outdoors is always a straight arrow.
Coming up next, a Minnesota storm for the history books. Find out why the Armistice Day blizzard caught so many hunters off guard.
Minnesota Bound is brought to you by Minnesota's select GMC dealers, Rapala Ice Force, Star Bank, and by Pearson Salted Nut Rolls.
The snow is coming to Minnesota, and quite a long time ago, a blizzard hit our state. It's one for the history books. That storm changed the way people hunt ducks, and it changed the way we all forecast weather.
Duck hunters wait all year for those cool fall days in the slough. But November 11th, 1940 changed Minnesota's hunting history. Armistice Day, the day of the storm.
I mean, we're moving on to 80 years since that storm, and meteorologists still think about it, they still look at the maps, and they're still haunted by it.
My neighbors and family members would talk about that storm.
Local author John Steffes penned a book all about the big storm, a story that impacted his family, specifically his dad, Bob Steffes, a diehard hunter.
No, 1940, I mean, they're just coming out of the Depression. I mean, my dad would duck hunt and fish to feed the family. You know, that's a big deal.
John remembers his dad and all his friends telling him about that day.
Oh, they just talked about seeing more ducks than they had ever seen before.
November 11th started calm and rather temperate, 50 degrees in most spots. John's dad headed to the Mississippi River to chase wave after wave of birds.
He was in Winona, and he would hunt the river bottoms.
The reason the ducks were flying is because they knew that storm was coming.
Turns out, weather forecasters did not.
Back then, all of the weather information for all of Minnesota came out of Chicago, if you can imagine. So the night before the storm moved in, nobody was at the weather office. So no one saw it strengthening so quickly.
By afternoon, temps plummeted from 50 degrees to just 15. Heavy snow quickly paralyzed much of Minnesota.
The cars stranded in the roads, the trains that stopped, and then, of course, the hunters that were out frozen in their tracks.
50 to 60 mile per hour wind trapped duck hunters on the river.
They just, you know, realized that too late that it was getting a lot worse than they thought. My dad's motor froze up. Other guys maybe capsized their boats. High waves kept them on the shore and they couldn't get across channels.
John discovered details of that stormy night in his father's personal journal.
Opened up to the page where it was 1940, the Armistice Day Snowstorm. Wind blowing rollers 4 to 4.5 feet high. You know, ducks were flying. You got 2 mallards.
And by nightfall, those hunters realized that they were in trouble.
Hundreds struggled that night, trapped along the river.
And then with those waves crashing into the river bottoms, which is usually a low area, they got wet. So once they got wet and the winds were 50 miles an hour and the temperatures dropped below zero with the wind chill, you know, they got themselves in big trouble.
The next day, just at sunrise, famed pilot Max Conrad tried to help.
He got his plane out on the runway. People had to hold onto the wings of his plane because the winds were going to flip his plane sitting on the runway. And his mission was to go up there and drop supplies to the stranded hunters who were waving for help.
Rescuers eventually got to most missing hunters. Many lost souls who could simply not weather the brutal storm. John's dad made it home. He put pencil to paper.
Here he's writing about lots of hunters are still in the pool, you know, the river pool. Yesterday, some drowned.
150 people died in the Armistice Day blizzard. 49 of those were in Minnesota, and half of those were hunters.
I've talked to a lot of hunters in recent years here who were out in the storm, and they didn't have all that waterproof stuff.
Outdoor gear certainly changed. The storm also shifted weather forecasting.
After that storm, weather bureaus were actually manned 24/7, and the Twin Cities got a weather office.
Even so, the tale of the Armistice Storm sits on the pages and covers of books. The day the gales of November forced all to remember Minnesota weather.
The severity of the storm, the surprise of the storm, and the death toll of the Armistice Day Storm are the reasons that it is historic.
You know, I just seen a little glossiness.
Still ahead, we tag along as this hunter goes in search of a true Minnesota gem. And later, a Minnesota-bound classic all about the passion behind upland hunting.
Closed captioning on Minnesota Bound is brought to you by Connecticut.
Minnesota's North Shore has always been a hot spot for agates. Small, precious rocks created 1 billion years ago. Travis Frank met a Minnesota man who has as much character as these curious stones.
One might say the decor inside Lyndon Johnson's home rocks.
Everywhere we go, we got rocks.
Lyndon has agates of every size, shape, and color.
I have over 1,200 pounds of agates that I personally found. My biggest agate is 31 pounds. It's big.
He's a collector, inspector, and a die-hard hunter.
The thrill of the hunt. It's really the thrill of the hunt, not knowing what's ahead of you.
Lyndon, the Agate Man, hunts in unlikely places.
If I see a field with a lot of rock, and I'll knock on doors and find out who's the owner and get permission. I like to have a belt, so I have my hands free when I'm rock hunting. A lot of people think they have to go up by the North Shore. You know, I tell people, learn your own area.
Lyndon learned to hunt the farm fields in central Minnesota.
Sometimes we got to do a lot of walking. Sometimes you get lucky and you stumble on them quick. That's a good sign. They're small agates, they can be big ones.
If anybody knows where to look, it should be Lyndon. After all, he wrote the book on it.
Minnesota has Lake Superior agates. The Lake Superior agates formed over 1 billion years ago.
Scientists believe glaciers pushed them across Minnesota's landscape.
An agate is a Minnesota state rock. It is a type of gemstone. It's a beauty. Yeah, it was kind of dirty. You know, I just seen a little glossiness. This was pretty much buried, so it barely stuck out. You know, as you can tell, it's pretty dirty. Wash this up, it's gonna look a lot nicer. This is a nice quality stone. If you find a nice one, you get that natural adrenaline rush high that you just can't explain it. And you get hooked and you want to feel that feeling again. So you go out and you want to find more. And once you find that great stuff, them gemstones, it's pretty special. And some of these, a lot of people don't realize how valuable some agates can be. They can go for thousands of dollars, the high quality rare stones.
Yet, he doesn't sell them.
I rarely sell anything. If I do, it's just some of the small average stuff.
Instead, he takes his collection on the road.
I speak at schools and libraries, mostly, and some museums.
Teaching kids and fellow hunters his tricks and secrets.
I'm more about educating and showing people, hey, I found this, you can find this too. The kids really enjoy seeing everything. You know, I could sell the stuff and make money, but they'd be gone. So this way I can share them with everybody else.
For Minnesota's Agate Man, a good day means kicking dirt polishing rocks, and smiling kids. Now that's a passion that rocks.
Minnesota Bound is brought to you by your local carrier dealer, Radco Truck Accessories, and by Totem Resorts, the premier destination for world-class fishing.
Today's Minnesota Bound Classic takes Ron Shera way back to a not-so-lonely pheasant field.
And he shares all the reasons why he loves to chase those wild roosters.
South Dakota, like no other place in the world, means ringneck pheasants and pheasant hunting.
Fetch it up.
Well, besides being the pheasant capital of the world, it's a tradition. It's an economic benefit to South Dakota. But I think it's also an addition to the quality of life we have here. It's a tradition between father and son and grandfather, and it's been an important part of our heritage and an important part of our recreation. And we all enjoy it, and I think that we're glad that other people enjoy it too.
For sure, it's a ritual on the prairie that happens every autumn. It's also where friends and dogs gather to walk in lush grasslands or long cornfields in pursuit of a wild bird, a Chinese import that a century ago found a home in South Dakota.
The pheasant is arrogant, it's brash, it laughs at you, and it challenges you to come out and get me. Come out and get me.
It's a bird of immense popularity from the prairies of South Dakota to the controlled hunting fields of the Minnesota Horse and Hunt Club. In any scenario, however, it's a bird seldom easy to corner.
Not too tickled. Can you believe that?
And it's a bird that sometimes flies faster than it appears.
Hey, some of them gotta get away.
In short, if there is such a creature as the perfect game bird, it well might be the ringneck.
Very coy. It'll sit sometimes and get right up underneath your feet. Other times you can be 100 yards from it, it'll flush. It's just the unexpected behavior of the pheasant that I enjoy.
In places like Iowa and South Dakota, hunters by the tens of thousands come every fall to experience the thrill of ringnecks in the air. It's a bird for the common man and the famous one too. Viking long snapper Mike Morris has his own ringneck memories.
It's nice to get away from football a little bit and just kind of hear yourself think and watch the dogs work. And whether you get anything up or not, it's fun to watch the dogs and stomp through some brush.
You know, the beauty of the pheasant is more than just feather deep. This bird has adjusted well to its new home in the upper Midwest. Lives on farms like this, in the grain fields, nests in the grasslands. And there are millions of them now, roaming the states of Iowa, Minnesota, and the Dakotas and other places as well. But the other beauty of the ringneck pheasant is that it works well in hunting preserves. You can raise it in a pen, let it go, and it's still very wild.
In fact, the ringneck seems so at home, it's hard to believe the bird is actually a chicken from the Orient. The ringneck we have is a hodgepodge of mostly Chinese, Korean, and Manchurian pheasant strains. The first birds were imported and released in Oregon in 1881. Since then, the rise and fall of the bird has been tied to agricultural practices and federal farm programs that create fields of nesting cover. If we've learned anything from this gaudy foreigner, the lesson is the bird needs habitat to survive. The rest of the pheasant story is obvious. If we maintain a home for the ringneck, there always will be hunting dogs willing to search the cover and bird hunters willing to follow behind.
I understand my dad's passion for chasing pheasants. I too have the same addiction.
The difference is you know how to hit birds.
Not always, to be honest.
Well, that about does it for us. We will see you back here next week.
In the meantime, don't forget to introduce a kid to the great outdoors. And a miss.
Transportation provided by Premier Transportation. Call 1-800-899-7433. To get more Minnesota Bound, including full episodes, go to mnbound.com. And to follow our latest adventures, like us on Facebook.